Let's go. We are live on the day after. There's Jason Staples. Let's start it. Jason, let's go. Welcome to the Inside Carolina podcast, the day after Carolina Coastal Division champions, Johnny T-shirt and JohnnyT-shirt.com. Jason, unfortunately, I totally forgot that Buck was not available after the Wake Forest game. So we will 100% get Buck on one of these podcasts this week to discuss this. But I don't know how to put it in perspective, man. I've seen a lot of football games over a lot of years, and 9-1. I'm gonna steal Buck's words. 9-1. Doesn't matter how it happened. We can talk about it. We will talk about it. But Carolina is 9-1 and Coastal Division champs.
Yep, and let's just take a moment to mourn the fact that El Jefe is not with us this morning because, man, I would have loved to have heard him on this game.
We will definitely get him in. He is out on assignment. We'll call it that. Life happens. Some
Accurate.
weddings happen, and Buck is out there. So it won't be as fun a show, but we'll certainly break it down. Just your general overall thoughts. I mean, I've got one. I said 9-1, but I've got another one. Drake May for Heisman. Jason, what you got?
I mean, that's a good place to start. But the other thing that I think really needs to be there needs to be a tip of the cap to the defense for the second half. So you look at the second half numbers. The defense gave up 8.3 yards per play, but only 13 points. They stiffened up when it really mattered in those last couple drives, and in that fourth quarter, they gave up 0. And ultimately, without that, Carolina didn't punch it in. They had a chance to score there on the 1 yard line, had a chance to score, and Wake Forest drove the field, looked like they were gonna score on that drive, and Carolina was able to get a stop there. And that really was the difference in the game. I mean, the defense did not play well as a whole in terms of between the 20s. They gave up a lot of yards. They gave up a lot of yards per play. They gave up some big plays. But you got to say something for a team that bows up at the right spot and doesn't give up points. There is a mentality to that of, you may get knocked around a little bit, but you never get knocked down. You never get knocked out. And I think that makes a big difference. So I think that's something else that needs to be brought in here. The other thing too is you got to think about. I think you tip your cap to some of those younger receivers too. Once Green went out, Downs was out for a while, and you saw Copenhaver as a young tight end with two key catches of over 20 yards. Blackwell had a couple catches. Paysor had a clutch catch. So you had a lot of contributors in this game without which Carolina does not win this game. But yeah, Drake May for Heisman is a good place to start.
Yeah, he's just fantastic. But let's talk about the defense first because you talked about the second half. Look at that fourth quarter drive chart for Wake Forest. Turnover on downs, interception, turnover on downs. This is after they had put up 5 touchdowns in the first 3 quarters. And I'll admit I haven't watched the game again. I was obviously there, and we were way up in the corner there. So there's a lot to look at when you watch it again. But what was Carolina doing differently, Jason, there in the second half? Did you see anything different, or was it a purely a get after it more effort?
I think it was more just get after it. I mean, they did go back to some of the stuff that they did early in the game in that first quarter. So they went back to some like Okie type looks. Wake Forest was ready to run the football in certain cases, but they went to some like 5-2 type looks where they went big on the defensive line in certain cases. They did that certainly coming out of the end zone on that long drive. So they did a little bit of that, and then other than that, I mean, they brought some pressure a couple times, and they got gashed when they did it, as we predicted. That's one thing I was a little surprised by by Chiswick's approach at times in this one because he was much more willing to bring 6-7 guys at times than I would have been against Wake Forest, given the given the results that I'd seen in prior games. But and they got gashed when that happened. But really, what it boiled down to is when they got down into the red zone, and they're driving inside 10 minutes or so. A couple guys just made plays. I mean, you saw you saw Power Eccles make a key stop. They blitzed him off the edge, and he just sniffed out where the ball was, made a key stop on third down. That was critical. And Kamen Rucker made space for him on that play, and then on the fourth down play there, they came out in that Okie look where again you've got basically what an Okie is it's a 5-2 front where you have five guys on the line of scrimmage, and then you're going to have two backers behind them. Well, in that Okie look, they did it a couple different ways, but they did this where when Wake Forest went with some reduced sets, some tighter splits, things like that, they brought the nickelback, or whatever you want to call Boykins, because I think he's more of a linebacker, honestly. He's just a smallish linebacker. But they put Boykins, and sometimes they actually used Rah in that role during this game. But they put Boykins on the line of scrimmage where you would normally line up a defensive end in a 5-2 front. So you've got three bigger defensive linemen, of which one is Rucker, so he's the power end there. You got three bigger defensive linemen. Then you've got your edge guys, where you've got one, your jack, your hybrid defensive end, and then you've got Boykins there. And from that, they brought five guys, and they dropped one of the ends. So it's not like they brought a ton of pressure. This is just a standard look. But those guys won some matchups. I mean, if you take a look at what happened there, the guys that were there, they compressed the pocket, and they managed to take away what Wake Forest wanted to do. And the key thing here is that the coverage guys actually reacted well to what Wake was doing. I mean, I looked at the formation and the format of what they were doing on that 4th and 3. And it's like, oh, I think I know what they're going to do here. And as soon as that guy went in motion, it's like, yep, they're going to look at this particular concept. And they went to it, and Carolina sniffed it out. The guys in coverage just did their jobs. They were there. Hartman was not comfortable pulling the trigger. And so then he tried to run it, and you had proper rush lane discipline from the defensive line. So it's not that they did anything, schematically so much. It's that guys just turned it up and finished and did their jobs right at the end. And, that's what good teams do. Good teams finish. Good teams ultimately bow up and make those plays when the season or when a game is on the line. And we've seen time after time this Carolina team, not really play well on one side of the ball at times. And then when they've needed it, when it's been a one possession deal, when it's a got to have this to win it, they keep managing to do it.
Timely. I mean, absolutely timely. Let's talk a little bit about the Cam Kelly play. I hope that's one of your breakdowns.
Oh yeah.
When you put them together this week. All I saw was a guy open, and then I saw Cam Kelly come across the field and make a play. What'd you see on that one?
So yeah, that one was one where as soon as it happened, even if it hadn't been a pick, I was going, oh, I'm looking at that one. Because what Carolina did is they're playing run with the front. And so the thing that's tricky, and you remember in the WCHL segment, I'd mentioned that if you are going to blitz them, you have to do it judiciously, and you have to use some stuff that's going to buzz under where they usually like to throw their RPOs if you do come after them. Well, that's kind of what they did here. So what they did is they're playing run hard on 2nd and 8 here, and it's an RPO, it's a glance route RPO. So it's sort of like a actually it's not a glance, it's a they actually run this with like a square in, so it's a little deeper than what a lot of teams do. But basically, the way that they're looking at this is if the safety on that side of the field or whoever's responsible for that hook zone where that square in is going to come across, if whoever is normally going to be there comes downhill against the run, then Hartman's going to pull that ball and throw the in. So that's what they're running. What Carolina did here is they had Cam Kelly as a robber in this role. So it's a zero deep coverage. So it's zero coverage, but they do have a robber against the three receivers. So there are three receivers in the play on this RPO for Wake Forest. And Cam Kelly is designated as the robber. His job is to take away in breaking routes. And so he's initially sitting on the slot receiver there, but he kind of recognizes right away, like, wait a second, that's not going to be the primary here. He's running a stop. And as soon as he sees that, it's like, okay, I'm going to get underneath. And he gets underneath. He finds work. He looks across, knowing that that's probably coming on that other side against that run concept, and came right across underneath it. It's just a really heads up, smart play from a guy who's he's the free safety here. He doesn't have a specific coverage responsibility in this once they keep that tight end in. And so he essentially becomes a robber, and he did exactly what his job is supposed to be there. Find work, undercut whatever you can, and that's that. So I suspect, by the way, if they had actually released the H back or whatever, he's probably in man there. But since they didn't release, actually no, the H is on the other side, they would have had to release the back. So as soon as it's a run action, he's just got to find he's got to find work there, and he found the work and came across, and that was ball game.
Yeah, I mean, he came out of nowhere there, at least from our vantage point, and made the play. That's his third interception in 2 years against Wake Forest. So he's definitely he's timely. I
Well,
mean,
we talked about
because
that off air.
yeah, and he got cooked early. I mean, he had some mistakes early in the ball game, but he steps up. Just sort of expound on what you saw from the back end for the most of the night. I think Wake Forest, and this is what we talked about. If you blitz or if you try to blitz, you better be prepared to cover somebody. Wake was 17.8 yards per completion on the night. Some big plays for Wake. What did you see from the back end? Because I want to cover this defense more because, quite frankly, leaving the game, my thought was all of the people that have banged on this defense, and some rightfully so, need to eat some crow when the game's on the line because Carolina's 9-1, and how many times has the defense made a play at the end of the game, like you mentioned, to seal the win or to get the win?
Yeah,
I mean,
I think the back end. Look, they got roasted some. They took some risks, and they gave up some big plays. I mean, I'm looking at the big play comparison here. They gave up 7 passing plays for 233 yards, including a 60-yarder and a 32-yarder for a score. So I mean, that's not great, but at the same time, they made some key plays. They did a good job of sitting on some of the core concepts that Wake likes to throw, and you could see the big corners actually storm duck. You think about the one play on the sideline where A.T. Perry has the ball in his hands, and Storm kind of just gets his hands in there and punches through just enough to jostle it and create an incomplete pass there. Those are things. That's fourth quarter. That's just playing through the hands, playing proper effort enough to disrupt what was a sure catch on the sideline before he stepped out. And it was the little things like that they did where it's just the extra little bit of fight where they made a couple of the key plays on the margin. So they gave up some really big ones and, didn't look good at times, but they did win some plays on the margins. And when you're playing on the margins, that's what you have to do to win these kind of games. I mean, I mentioned in the prior podcast that, Florida State outplayed this Wake Forest team, but they lost like 5 or 6 plays on the margins that were the difference in the football game. A back shoulder fade to A.T. Perry, similar kind of concept. That actually wasn't Perry. Never mind. That one wasn't Perry. There was another third down conversion to Perry that was like this. There was a back shoulder concept that corners in great position, couldn't cover it much better, and just didn't get his hand through the ball. Just missed it by a couple, a few inches, and then Wake Forest scores on that instead of getting stopped on that drive, and that's the difference in the game. Well, in this game, you have a similar thing. Storm Duck gets the breakup. You have a 4th and 3 down there, and Wake Forest scores a touchdown there, and this game might be out of reach. And instead, you just make the play on the margin, and they come up a half a yard short. It's those things that the defense, back end, front end, I don't care. That's the stuff that really has been the difference. And again, giving up big plays, but also making enough plays on the margin to win. And when you've got Drake May, when you're when you're going to have that dude, well, you don't have to win every play. You just have to win enough that your offense, that they actually have to win some against your offense, and that's gonna be tough. I mean, we talked about this too. Also, the WCHL thing. Y'all asked, what do you think the magic number is? And you remember my response to that was, I'm telling Gene Chizik, if you can keep them under 34, then I feel like my offense is probably going to win this game. Well, they hit 34 on the number.
Exactly.
And that was barely enough. But that's what they did. They hit the number they needed to hit. And it feels almost like they're reverse engineering that. Like how many stops? Like we're not gonna be able to choke this team out. We're not gonna hold them to 6-3, 10 points or whatever. But we're going to see they're going to have 12 total drives, right? That's what they had, including the one right before the half, which was basically a kneel down. So 11 drives. How many times, if our offense has it 11 times, how many times do we think we can score on them? All right. Well, let's see. Can we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Can we get 6 stops on 11 drives? Can we just bat 50%? I think it feels like they're kind of doing that, where it's like just sort of playing a little bit of roulette of like, can we just get stops on more than half of or around half of the drives, because our offense is going to score more than half the time. And I think that's basically where they're at.
Yeah, somebody asked me in the parking lot before the game, what does the defense have to do for Carolina to win? I said, make Wake punt 3 times. Wake punted 3 times.
3 times.
And then they stepped up and made some plays. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I wanted to go towards the defensive front. A lot of people are saying it's the best the defensive front has played. Maybe. What you see, we talked a lot about blitzing, a lot about pressure and all that, and I don't have the grades in front of me or the pressure grades or whatever, and you may, but what did you see from the front 7? I thought there were times where they got stoned, but there were a lot of times where Carolina had a guy running free in the backfield, or at least coming through on Hartman. And I thought one of the big plays, probably one of the aha plays for me, was when Ra got through and used his athleticism. Hartman's not going to outrun anybody or juke anybody, but Ra stayed right on him and made a play, a sack down there at our end, the Rams Club end of the stadium there. What did you see from that front 7?
They moved him around a little bit in this game. I mean, that's one thing, is that they used some stunts. They used they slanted him a decent amount, and just tried to create some movement against Wake Forest up front. I think that's one of the things that I saw is defensively, they didn't want to just let Wake Forest line up and know exactly, basically just turn this into a vertical displacement situation where Wake Forest could just get upfield or do their usual stuff. They slanted and moved those guys quite a bit in this game. And more than, bringing extra bodies, it was more about that on a lot of the plays that they had success. And, you had some guys, Rucker in particular, win a number of times with just quickness, just beating his guy across his face, doing some of that. And then when they were doing this, they were pretty gap sound. And, there were some mistakes there. They were not uh, as consistent as you'd like to see. But by and large, they didn't make a ton of mistakes in terms of interior gap discipline because Wake makes you pay for that.
Mhm.
They did a lot of I think they used some bigger front personnel at times. A little less Jack involved on the interior. Jack was consistently on the edge instead of on the interior. Uh, sometimes they brought him inside against other teams, but I think by and large uh, they played physical football against a team that wants to push you around inside and uses a lot of double teams and things like that to cause you some frustration. And they just did a good job overall in terms of being physical, reestablishing the line of scrimmage, and like I said, moving around a little bit. They got some things taken care of, and they got some tackles for loss. I mean, actually, I don't know how many tackles for loss. Let me look at that because they had a number of them in this game. Yeah, they only had two for -16. I guess the thing that makes it hard is sometimes on that slow mesh, you get what looks like a sack, but it's for 1 yard because
Mhm.
he's behind the line, he's behind the offensive line, but on the basically lined up on the line of scrimmage at that point. They got a number of those plays where they held up enough that it was not a clear give read. And again, so much of this for the defense was they did enough,
Mhm.
and that's kind of where this fell down to.
What'd you think? Here's what I was going to ask when we were talking about the defense, and we're going to switch to the offense after the break. Shout out to the 430 plus folks that are in here on a Sunday morning on the day after with Inside Carolina. Jason Staples there. I'm Tommy. Buck is off today, but his column will be posted shortly, and that always gets a ton of reads and comments. So be on the lookout for that here in a minute. What'd you think there? And I personally thought it was a good decision. I think they had to do it. But what'd you think about Mac trusting his defense enough to punt it there with 5 minutes left, 6 minutes left, giving it back to Wake Forest and Sam Hartman? What was your initial thought there? Because I know we've seen that movie, as Buck likes to say and I like to say, and it's just kind of a slow, painful death for North Carolina. Of course, Cam Kelly makes the play. What did you think of that decision?
Funny thing is that I agreed with it in that moment. Did I feel comfortable with it? No. And if I'm Mac Brown, I definitely don't feel comfortable with it. But they given field position, given that was 4th and 4, and you're at 6 minutes. I mean, it's 5:55 on the clock when they on that fourth down. If you go for it and they'd had trouble on fourth down all game, right? This was a game where they had not had success. I mean, they were 0 for 2 on fourth. They've had great success on fourth down all year, but you're 0 for 2 on fourth down to this point in the game. That's got to factor into your decision making, right? So you're looking at 4th and 4 with just under 6 minutes left, and you're on the -32, 33. I looked at that and I'm going, like, if it's 4th and 1, maybe even 4th and 2, I might go for it there. But they'd been getting after you a little bit on the line of scrimmage. I mean, that's how they got you there in that position to begin with. Is they'd been getting after your quarterback a decent amount. They'd gotten into the backfield some. So at a certain point, you have to make that decision. I also thought it was the right decision to go for it on 4th and 1 on going into the end zone. That was a tough decision. I know a lot of people probably question that one, saying you got to take the field goal and get the lead there. But I think the right call there, given the flow of the game, is you got to score touchdowns,
Mm.
and you're half a yard out, and you've been pretty good on fourth down all year. You got to trust your quarterback there. You got to trust your offense, and then you got to trust that your defense will find a way to get a stop in 99 yards. So I agreed with that one, and I agreed with the punt decision. I thought both of those, given where it was in the game and given how the numbers work out, I thought both of those are the right decision.
Yeah, I agree 100% that you have to punt it there. And the question, we were talking up there is who do you trust? Do you trust Drake or you trust your defense? And Mac clearly decided to punt it and trust the defense, and it worked out. I would agree with that decision every time, though, no matter what, because if you don't get it there, then Wake Forest just eats clock and kicks a field goal and puts you down 4. It's
Fortunate Wake didn't kick a field goal on fourth down on their end.
oh yeah, absolutely.
That's the one that I thought may have been a bad decision.
Yeah, I don't. There was a lot of gunslinger coaching yesterday. I mean, just like USFL, we're going for everything, not kicking field goals. But that play though, when Hartman on the fourth down where he fumbled it forward, that's the play, right? That was fourth down where he fumbled it forward, and they
Yeah.
said they stopped him. Whew.
Yeah, I think he might have actually been down before the fumble there. I mean, I haven't gone back and looked closely at that
It was
replay, but
close.
I thought he was down. But either
Knowing the
way,
rules, though, knowing the rules had props to my kid, my son. He was like, "You can't fumble forward. You can't fumble forward,"
yep.
and that's what happened. So, just crazy chain of events there. North Carolina's defense gets it done. Carolina wins 36-34. We're going to come back after the break, talk a little bit about some offense. I think Carolina did all right on offense at times, didn't on other times in a couple plays from Drake May specifically. This is the game plan. Oh, day after podcast. It's been a long day, folks. The day after podcast, that's Jason Staples. I'm Tommy Ashley. Johnny T-shirt. Support them. They support you as the Inside Carolina Premium subscriber. They support this website as great sponsors of these podcasts and these shows and all this content you get. You get 10% off if you're a premium subscriber. You got to be. You got to be a premium subscriber. You get Jason's film breakdowns. You get all the recruiting news. Join us on the Inside Carolina Premium boards. And do me a favor. Anybody in this chat that's not subscribed to the YouTube channel, do it. National guys are going to pay the bills the day after. We'll be right back. It's the day after podcast, Inside Carolina. I'm still missing Buck Sanders. And as you know, and as I mentioned earlier, Buck will be back with us next week. But Jason, Buck sent one word to me. He said 9-1. And everybody kept asking, I guess that's 3 words. Everybody kept asking, how is this team 9-1? How is this team 9-1? Let's get to the Drake May portion of the program. I think he had 519 yards total offense. And quite frankly, he missed some throws and had some drops that probably would have had over 600. What did you see from him, especially late? I thought that he took a couple hits that maybe bounced him around, maybe shook him up a little bit. But I mean, the guy just keeps straight on getting it done. And then Josh Downs is laid out in the end zone with full body cramps, as he describes it. Gets an IV, comes back in. I mean, I don't know what else we can say about these guys.
Yeah, if you've ever had full body cramps, you know exactly what he's talking about. I've had that happen a couple times, and first of all, kudos to him for getting back in there after that, because I've had it so that after the full body cramp, you're basically you're ready to just lay down and go to bed right there. I mean, it's over. so for him to go in and get doctored up a little bit and then come right back out and then make a couple huge plays after that. Yeah. But actually, the thing is, you mentioned, so as you were formulating your question, you said, what'd you see from him? The first word that came to my mind was toughness. And then you talked about that he took some shots. He took, he got lit up a few times, and a couple times, on a slide, or in other cases where they definitely went after him a bit. And thing I saw from Drake as much as anything was just flat out toughness. And a guy that isn't just going to stand in there, isn't just gonna take those shots, but is gonna fire back on his own as well. And how did they close this game out? With him running.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, that's the thing. He was the leading rusher in this game. 19 carries for 71 yards in this game. That tells you all you need to know about where they were offensively, is that it was the Drake May show all around, where essentially Wake Forest kept having the right answer to a lot of what Carolina was putting out there. And then sort of like playing I don't know if folks out there play, Trump type games like spades or euchre, these sorts of things. But, Drake is that trump card you just put down on the table when, they've got the right play, and you just happen to be holding that card and you go, all right, that'll win that hand. All right, it's time for me to take that trick. And Carolina kept doing that, and that was enough. And the thing is, that's despite they had a uncharacteristic drop from Antoine Green. They had an uncharacteristic drop from Downs at one point. Drake missed a couple throws, like you mentioned. Although, I mean, look, he's 63% on the day, and he wasn't just throwing at the line of scrimmage. I mean, yeah. So, despite all that, despite not having their A+ game, despite playing against the defense that played, I think, better than I expected them to on the whole. They played physical, and they did a good job of getting after Carolina's core concepts. Drake kept hitting his number 2 guy, or in certain cases, just putting the ball on the number 1 guy where nobody else could get it. So, yeah, it's you can't say enough about a guy that I think should be the Heisman front runner right now. I mean, Carolina's 9-1. What do you think their record would be? And look, this is not a knock on Jacoby Criswell. He's a good quarterback.
Mhm.
So let's bracket. You have this whole thing of like Carolina might be a 3-win team without Drake May. Okay, well let's make this a little bit more of a fair thought experiment. What do you think this Carolina team would be with Sam Howell at quarterback?
I'd say not 9-1.
They're not 9-1. I mean, I don't think they're that. So, I mean, you think about this. Do they beat App State in that game?
I do not think so.
Probably not. So that's one. Going to lose to Notre Dame too. I think they probably lose this one. Although this one might have been. I mean, given how Sam played against
Wake.
Wake the last couple of years, I might give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. But I don't think they're 9-1. I think they're 6-4, 7-3, somewhere in there. And that's an NFL quarterback, y'all.
Yeah. And Drake is beyond NFL quarterback.
Drake is a franchise quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the stuff here, another 9 receiver day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 receivers caught passes. Josh Downs, of course, leads the way with 11 for 154. But you go all the way down, J.J. Jones and Kobe Pacer caught 25 and 22-yard catches. Just the way he distributes the football. And I thought Wake Forest at times looked really, really aggressive on defense and attacking more than I had. It seems like, they can do it once in a while, but I thought they played a decent day on defense, and Drake just shredded them. You talked about it. It just slice you up underneath whatever you need to do. I said before the game.
Killing him with the tight end.
Oh, yeah, and Copenhaver and Morales and Nesbitt. I mean, what are that? Tight end catches, 5, 2, 7, 9 catches from the tight ends. I mean, what did he do wrong in this game, Jason? What did you see from Drake May that you said, he's just not playing as well? Is there anything out there other than I think he did miss a couple throws that he normally makes, but
yeah, I think it's really that. I didn't see anything glaring that I go, oh man, that was tough. He didn't see that or this just a couple bad decisions. He missed a couple things that he had a guy open earlier in a couple cases, got it out a little bit late. Actually, the one 4th down conversion where he went to Morales probably sticks out as the one play that of all the plays in this game I'd look at and go, May missed it. That's the one because he was open early and May just was late on the throw. And I think he was looking elsewhere and misdiagnosed a little bit and then came to him too late and then missed his spot just a little bit, partly as a result. And that's why that 4th down didn't happen. But that was one he normally makes. That's one where, he's just slower on the processing than normal. When you're getting to that point where you're nitpicking at that level, and The one throw, running full on sprint to his left, throw across his body to a guy that's covered, but throwing him open toward the middle of the field.
Yeah.
That was just absolutely filthy. Just filthy. And if you're a defensive coordinator, you look at that and you're like, you ain't beating that. Like, not just tip your cap. It's just like, all right, here's my money, man. You just go ahead and take it. Like that's so bad. And look, if I want to really nitpick, I could say, well, he could have put that ball another yard out in front of the receiver and he might have gone, been able to run through it for a longer game. But I mean, there's only a few guys at any level that make that throw. I mean, that's an Aaron Rodgers,
Mahomes.
Mahomes, uh, Josh Allen type throw that you don't see guys make that. You got also the guy I compared him to in preseason. He also makes that. That's what,
Yep.
4 guys at the next level.
And that's it.
I mean, that's there might be a couple more, but I mean that's a throw that not very many guys see, let alone attempt, let alone execute. So, but again, you asked what he did wrong, and he missed that. He missed his spot on that throw by about 2.5 feet. So,
And he's 19, and he's just scratching the surface. All the guys you're comparing him to are NFL players with plenty of years of experience. I mean, it's just fascinating to watch. I mean, you could see that throw from anywhere in the stadium. It was just like, what did he? What? How did he make that throw? And quite frankly, he's done it multiple times. It's not a one-off for Drake. He continues to make the great throws. Somebody's talking about deep passes and all. I think he's a little short on those. Look,
he hangs those out a little bit. He's still getting it. I don't think he has as much. This is one thing I said preseason. I don't think he has as much natural touch as what Sam Howell did on some of the deep balls. Sam was an elite bucket thrower. I mean, you talk about being able to throw the deep posts, the vertical, your deep takeoff routes and that sort of thing. Some guys just have it innately in them that they have exactly the right amount of touch on the ball. They consistently hang it there to put that, on the receiver in stride or whatever. I think Drake's still getting a feel for that. I think some of it is mechanics, honestly. I think he could be a little bit better in terms of his deep ball mechanics. He's also been throwing that a little bit late at times. I'd like to see him get that ball out there a little earlier than he did on, for example, the one that hung up. I'm trying to remember who that was to on the deep post route. I think it was to Blackwell. That he had a couple steps and then got brought back by the throw. If Drake makes that throw just a beat earlier, then that, even hanging it up there a little bit, it probably scores. So some of it's that. So I think that's the one thing during the off season that I'd really that's one of the things. There are about 3 things I'd have him working on in the off season. This is a guy I'd love to be working with as a private quarterback tutor, just to get him on a few things, just certain things mechanically tightened up, because there's almost nothing to do with him, but it's like working with an elite, PGA pro, where, okay, you might have the some of the most natural ball striking ability on tour, but if we can just get this one tiny thing in your setup addressed, then we don't have to do anything else. Well, with May, there's just a couple things, a little more knee flex in the pocket, not bouncing quite as much, and just a little bit more emphasis on ball control, ball security, that is, in the pocket, 2 hands on the ball. And beyond that, it's just rep out, throw in some of those bucket throws with touch a little bit more. And you're looking at a guy who's a finished product, basically, as a thrower.
yeah,
So,
it's a. To your
yeah,
point there, we are definitely picking nits talking about his game. I mean, he can do most everything. And Jason, I mentioned it earlier, and I didn't mean to cut you off there, but he's 19, and he's going to get a lot better. And somebody asked, John Sink in the chat said, You changed your pick from a L in the preseason show to a win when we picked on Thursday night and then on yesterday. He's why. I mean, give him a chance, and Carolina can get it done, and Drake did. Um,
Josh
we could,
Downs, real quick. I'm going to interrupt
yeah,
you
I was
real
going to
quick.
say go to Josh.
Yeah, Josh Downs, by the way, the last 3 games, 40 catches for 459 yards and 5 touchdowns.
And everybody knows he's getting it.
If he had not played any other games this season, so this is per David Hale, if Josh Downs had not played any other games this season other than those 3 games, he'd be 9th in catches in the ACC.
I think he's pretty good, huh?
That's on the season, by the way, not just in ACC play. He wouldn't just be 9th in ACC play. He'd have the ninth most catches in the conference in 3 games. And that's 5 touchdowns in those games, too. And he is just a monster in the red zone, which is hilarious to say about someone who's as small as he is. Normally, you think red zone ace, and you're thinking, 6'4" jump ball specialist or whatever. But Josh he's just so slippery that if you do not bracket him down there, and sometimes even if you do, he's just going to shake free. He dang near had another one that wound up on the 1 yard line that honestly he just should have run it about a half a yard further. But I mean, you're looking at that dude. We talked about it. Does he make May better, or does May, it is a symbiotic relationship where those guys make each other better. And I think we saw that in this game that Drake played well. They still moved the ball and they still scored without either Green or Downs on the field. So that shows you, I mean, that guy's that good at quarterback. But Downs just makes it so much easier for everybody. I mean, he just opens so much up for this offense because some of the stuff he does as a route runner and as a elite big play threat at wide receiver just makes it so much easier. It opens everything up.
Yep, he draws eyes, like you've said in the past, and it allows 8 other guys to get catches for Drake May and Carolina. Somebody in the chat mentioned, and we could go down the laundry list. I mean, Nesbitt was fantastic early. That Copenhaver made catches. I mean, just all the way down you can go. Let's talk about red zone play calling. Somebody asked that, and I'm trying to find it in the chat. We got so many people. We got almost 600 people in the chat. I can't keep up with all the chats, all the comments, but props to everybody for joining us. Let's talk about red zone. Was it 2 times they were down there and couldn't get it done? What did you see on those? I know you can break it down more after reviewing tape and all, but I just thought Carolina left a bunch of points on the table that would have made this less of a heart attack game for everybody watching. What'd you see?
I saw a few plays on the margin that just wound up not. So we just talked about this on the defense. The defense made a few plays on the margin that were the difference. I saw a few plays on the margin down in the red zone that just Wake Forest defense made those plays. I mean, that's the thing. At a certain level, and I've heard this from multiple coaches, I've experienced it as a coach myself. When you get down in the tight zone, especially, so inside the 10-yard line, so you got red zone and then you got, tight red zone. When you get down in the tight zone, at a certain level, I mean, you can Philly special it sometimes, do different things to, really get one that's real easy. Okay, fine. But as a rule, down in that tight zone, it boils down to you need to have somebody make a play, whether it's on offense or on defense. You need to have somebody just beat somebody. And that's what happened a couple times. Wake Forest had it, you think about the one where Carolina had the opportunity to basically go ahead there and break open the game, and you hand the ball off and they've got a guy 3 yards in the backfield making contact on the running back. Just have one little miss block, little bit of leakage there, and it's enough to stop the play. And the thing is, the back broke that tackle. He won his part of the play, but he's breaking the tackle 3 yards deep in the backfield, gets back to the line of scrimmage, which is a good run, by the way. But you get one little miss where those things down in that zone, it just everything happens so fast and everything is so tight that one little mistake by either side is the difference. And so that was that play. You've got, Josh, they go to Josh Downs on a little pivot route or whatever, and Wake Forest covered that so well. I mean, look, Drake May put it on him. Perfect throw, great route by Downs, and he gets tackled on the half-yard line going out of bounds. I mean, that's just the defense being good enough to keep it from getting in the end zone and making a play one-on-one. I mean, one-on-one with Josh Downs down there. And he gets a gain, gets down inside the one, but not quite enough. So, I'm seeing folks saying, well, we didn't even give Elijah a chance down there. No, they did. They gave him some carries down there, but you got to be able to block it. And, Wake got penetration the couple times they did. A couple other times they went to some of the things that have worked on the season, and it was covered. So May didn't have a good place to go. Drake also, you actually mentioned earlier, you asked where did he make some mistakes. This was another one where he took that one sack at the end where they're down inside the 5, and it's why they had to kick the field goal. He took that sack on first down. That was a bad one. Yep. He's got to throw that out of the end zone into the cheap seats. And then you've got a chance to score a touchdown there and feel a lot more comfortable about that last drive. But, that was another mistake. You can't take a sack there. You're inside the 5-yard line. You throw that into the cheap seats, and then you're, still second and goal in a position where you feel like you can still at least threaten them with the run. And, the next 2 plays, he did put it in the cheap seats because they covered him. They covered everything. So at a certain point, you just tip your cap and say the defense in that tight zone, they bracketed Josh Downs. They took away a lot of what you do. And, you tip your cap, and that's that. They won the one-on-ones in there. Yeah, other teams on scholarship too.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Other guys got other teams have players too, and Wake made some plays. The only real play I didn't like a ton is I don't like that counter pitch or whatever they call it, where Elijah Green's trying to get to the pylon and
on the 2-point play. Yeah, from the 1.5 there. I'm not real keen on that one either, but they've had a lot of success on that in the past. Yeah. So I mean, I understand why they ran it, but Wake was ready for it because they've run that about 3 or 4 times in the past in that kind of situation in the past several years.
Yeah, so absolutely.
Wake was prepared for that. That's great prep by Wake's defense coordinator.
Yeah, they get paid too. And the thing is, there was no cutback there. Everybody was yelling for him to cut upfield. It wasn't there.
No, and the design of that play, I mean, the way you coach that is you've got the fast, you're telling your back, and look, Elijah is fast. Like he's a 4.4 guy. The design of that play is to tell your guy, win the race to the pylon. That's your job. Because you've got 1.5 yards or 3 yards or whatever. You're normally calling that in tight situation, and this is a win the race to the pylon. Turns out Wake's DB there is also real fast. I mean, that guy could run because Elijah Green's outrunning most guys to that. But I mean, folks forget how many times they ran that play with Michael Carter. And they ran it last year a couple times with the transfer, whose name is escaping me right now. It's been a long day.
Ty Chandler.
Yep. Yeah, with Ty Chandler. And Ty Chandler won the race to the pylon a couple times. And Elijah's not a whole lot slower than Chandler. I mean, Chandler's really fast, but Elijah's not slow. Elijah's about as fast as Michael Carter was. I think he actually might run in the 40 a little faster. You got to win to the pylon, and he just ultimately Wake was prepped for it, and their guy can run too.
Yeah, I agree with somebody who said it's time to retire that one. I think they have run it.
Oh, I like it. You just have to have a counter off of it that you run a little bit more.
So we are about 50 minutes deep in the day after podcast. Jason Staples, Tommy Ashley. Jason, you got anything left? What's coming this week? I mean, obviously, for everybody in the chat, 500, 600 folks in here, you got a ton of content currently on the website. There'll be some content. I'll talk to Mike and EJ, and Ross will talk to Shot, and Vip will have his show. I mean, just so much going on in Inside Carolina, and there's a basketball season going on as well. But Jason, you got anything left for this podcast, for this day after show here? Carolina gets the Coastal Championship. Anything else you want to add, my friend?
You know, I think actually Rick Miner in the chat just asked a question that is a good way to wrap here. How does this team get up again on Saturday after clinching the Coastal? I don't think it's going to be that hard. This is one of those things where when you have success like this, teams are starting. A team that's doing this sort of thing is starting to learn how to build on success. I mean, you could ask that about several other games this year. You know, like how are they going to come out of that? That was an emotional high to win that game. I mean, last week was a rivalry win on the road. Went late fourth quarter. How do you come out of that? And okay, you're playing for the division. Okay, that's fine. But right now, if you're Mac Brown, you point to the standings and you say, we get to that ACC championship game with one loss. We got to give them a reason to consider maybe we should get a playoff bid. Not saying they'll give it to us, but we might give them a reason to really consider us. That's not hard to motivate. And look, this team, with what I've seen from Clemson the last few weeks, this team can beat Clemson. Would I pick them to beat Clemson right now? Probably not. But they're going to have more than a puncher's chance to beat this Clemson team. They got a better chance to beat this Clemson team than the 2015 team did that team.
Yep.
And so if you're Mac Brown, you look and you say, look, we are in November. We are playing meaningful games, and it's not enough to just win the conference. Let's see if we can win out. And let's give the pollsters, the committee, let's give them a reason to think maybe those boys in Chapel Hill deserve that playoff bid, because we don't know if there's going to be a one-loss champ from some other conference that they'll take over us. What happens if TCU loses twice from now on? What happens if Oregon loses another game? Did they win last night? I actually didn't see.
They got beat good.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
So all of a sudden you're like, wait a second. They're gonna. It might be between us at 12-1. If we can win out, it might be between us and a 2-loss SEC team, and they may actually 12-1 ACC champ guys. I think they get in.
I can't believe we're talking about this.
But you ask how I'm motivating my team?
Yep.
I'm saying, look, this week you're playing for more than just the ACC. You're playing for more than your division. You won your division. Let's move up a goal. Let's see if we can win the conference with one loss. And that starts by focusing and buckling down this week. That's how. So if I'm motivating my team, they say you don't want your team to look too far ahead or whatever. Well, sometimes you got to resettle them and say, guys, our biggest goals are still on the table. That's not real common mid-November. Not everybody gets a chance to have their biggest goals of their season still on the table mid-November. So now you get to buckle it up and play against a team that you should be able to put down. It's good opportunity. Which, by the way, I think they'll blow this Georgia Tech team out. So,
well, a couple things Mac said in the post game, and I think he's spot on here. One, they continue to make enough mistakes.
Oh yeah,
that it's pretty easy to see that it's easier to get better, or you can get better, and I think that's a great motivator. Two,
Georgia Tech, they're 9-1 and have not played a complete game yet.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And if they put it together, whether it's, against Georgia Tech, NC State, or against Clemson or beyond, it's coming at some point. And so that's a motivation thing. I also think this Georgia Tech team beat their butts last year. And granted,
And they could beat them again this year. I don't think they will, but you can just put that tape on and go, guys.
yeah, and I'd have that running on loop in Keenan Football Center. Anyway,
One last
Carolina's
thing, by the way,
all right.
just in terms of ACC, the ACC beat the SEC West champ,
Who's the West champ? LSU. Oh
LSU.
yeah, your team. Florida
So
State's legit.
my other the other university of which I'm an alum uh, beat that LSU team, and that was not a fluke. And Clemson's going to beat South Carolina. Louisville's going to have every chance to beat Kentucky, although I'm not sure if Cunningham's not healthy, I'm not sure they have as good a chance there. He got knocked out of the Clemson game. But this is going to be one of those things. What happens the next couple of weeks in terms of those ACC SEC matchups? I mean, Georgia Tech's going to get absolutely. Several words ran through my head here of what's going to happen between them and Georgia, and I'll just say that they're going to get beat. That's going to be an ugly football game, but the fact that the ACC might have a winning record against the SEC at the end of the year, and you've got a non-fluke win against the SEC West champ, don't tell me that that's not something that's going to ultimately come up if you have a 12-1 ACC champion coming into the final week of playoff discussions. You say, well, you got to have the second SEC team. They're better. Well, are they?
Yep.
Because that Florida State team beat that LSU team, and then that Clemson team beat that Florida State team. So are they? That's the sort of thing that's going to be discussed. So if I'm Mac Brown, I'm telling my team that's what we're playing for now. Raise your goals, raise your sights. Final third of the season is about the big goals.
Indeed it is. Carolina 36-34 beats Wake Forest in Winston. Be interesting to see where they are in the polls. The team down in West Raleigh went up 5 or 6 spots for beating Wake. We'll see if Carolina gets that kind of bounce. A lot of teams lost. If you got Drake May, you got away. And Carolina has repeatedly shown that. Carolina 9-1. Shout out to Buck Sanders. We miss you, buddy. Shout out to Jason Staples for the day after podcast. Shout out to the 500, and I think I saw 560 in here on a live show on a Sunday morning. It's a lot of folks. You guys make the dream work here at Inside Carolina. Keep doing it. Keep taking care. Jason Staples, Tommy Ashley, Johnny T-shirt, day after Inside Carolina. Thanks, folks. I'm trying to help you, man. You got babies running wild back there. If you're on the YouTube chat, you will see how this one came to a screeching halt. It's been fun, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tommy.